Hello and welcome to Journey to SEA 2025. This is Shelley-Ann Edwards-Barron, your creative writing specialist here to talk about reports, narratives, and comprehension. Welcome to those of you who are joining for the first time. And just to tell you a little bit about myself, I believe in multisensory learning, and that is something to do with having students, interact with the writing, interact with lots of different senses while they're learning about writing. It's something that we do in math and science, where we talk about manipulatives and, activities and all those things. It can be implemented in the creative writing classroom so that students don't have this dread about, oh, I have to write today. So many students absolutely hate writing. I am on a mission to change that because there's a way that we could learn about writing and have fun along the way. It doesn't always have to be writing and reading some more and writing some more. We can do a lot of stuff in between. So I have an activity to show you today. Well, it's an activity, I guess it's a um well, you'll see it. Where it's in the comprehension, believe it or not, because we can have fun with that too. It's not just about, reading and trying to force ourselves to understand. There are ways that we could learn about interpreting other people's ideas that are actually interesting and pretty fun for students so that they don't feel too distressed, learning about these things. So all right, what are we covering today? I need to share my screen so that you can see. And for those of you who have been following the lives, thank you so much for your comments, for your questions, and for checking in, just to let me know that, hey, what I'm doing is actually helping because that's my ultimate goal. I really want to make sure that what I share is useful so that both parents and teachers could make learning about writing and comprehension a little bit easier for students. So if you want to make sure that you check in with all of the lives. Make sure to like and follow my Facebook page. You can look for Wood Coach Youth, or you can look for Creative Writing and Comprehension Made Easy for Primary Schools. So yeah, I changed the name. It's a little bit longer, but it's a lot clearer on what the page handles. Their lives are also going up on YouTube, so you can follow Word Coach. That's Word Coach Limited. That is my YouTube channel and it's on my website as well. All the lives are there, archived. So if you go to wordcoach.com, that's werdcoach.com. If you go there, you can look for Journey to SEA 2025 and you would find all the lives in one place so that you don't have to go anywhere else. And while you're there, you can check around the website and, let me know I'm making some updates. Okay. All right. So what are we getting into today? Um, Transitions and incidents, I mean, like incident reports, characters and realism. We'll talk a little bit about that. When I say realism, we're talking realistic fiction as well as the concept of making a character feel real, even if it's a fantasy character. And then we're looking at context clues and responses. And then I'll show you the activity that you can do with your students or your child to help them start thinking about comprehension and interpreting context clues in a slightly different way. It really helps them kind of wrap their mind around the fact that, words and meaning and how they kind of work together. All right, and we're on to episode 34. Imagine that. 34 sessions. So if you're new to this, and like I said, welcome and thank you. Go back and check out some of the other videos because I do go into a lot more detail in these videos now between now and the exam. We're doing check-ins and refreshers and different things if you're still having challenges and keeping the preparation going. But in the earlier days, I spent a lot more time on different topics. So if there are some challenges that you're facing, still you can go and check in with those, or you can just WhatsApp me. During the presentation, you'll see my number. Let's see, let's give. So there's your number to the bottom there. We have 717-4993. Send me a WhatsApp message. I can't promise to answer immediately, but I will take a note of it. And during the next live, I'm going to answer questions or share. Um, I do get lots of questions about some of the things that I've already planned to share, so those I'll just, get into it. All right, so reminders this week. There's a fun way to learn everything. Yeah, I get that reminder all the time because even though I do the multisensory learning, it still fascinates me how well it works and how much the students and myself, how much I enjoy it too. So it just, I had that activity, the comprehension activity I did with a couple of students, and I was just like, yeah, that works, and it's a lot of fun. But of course, after the fun and while the fun is happening, we need to also buckle down and do the work. So we do have to include practice. We do have to have some sort of system or structure so that the fun is part of a bigger picture. It's not just having fun for having fun's sake. So everything has to be connected and related to what's happening. Yeah, this week, those are my reminders. You see the system and structure? Absolutely, absolutely important. So, okay, let's get into it. So for the reports, we're dealing with transition words and phrases. And we're talking a little bit about incident reports too. All right. And so, what I want you to pay attention to with the transition words and phrases, and of course, yes, I spent a couple of sessions discussing transition words and phrases in detail, giving examples and, showing how to merge sentences and all those things. So you can go back in the archives and find those videos. But what I really want to remind you of is that there are two different kinds of transitions. We have the transition words and the transition phrases, right? And so you really want to use both because they change the flow of the report and they really do help with, balancing things. But just note that transition words may feel a little bit more abrupt and transition phrases smoothen things out a little bit and they kind of gradually blend um, the ideas from one to another. The other thing is that you really don't want to overdo the blending. I know because transitions are useful and these transition phrases, sometimes they function like joiners in sentences. And when that happens, it really helps the sentence flow and you add that sort of complex nature to it. Because of that, some students they use a transition word or phrase in every sentence. That's going to get tedious and make the writing a little bit challenging to read in terms of the lengthening of the sentence. You don't want every single sentence, very long, taking up 2, 3 lines. You really don't want to balance it. So you want to look at, so for the transition words, we have like subsequently and afterward, and then for phrases where you have a few words together prior to the commencement of, whatever. So we could say like prior to the commencement of the assembly, and then you give the information. Now, after transition phrases, there's always a comma. So that little note of punctuation. What was I gonna say? Oh man, that's a funny word. But punctuation. So to keep that in mind when you're using transition phrases, we definitely want to keep that punctuation in mind and use the commas effectively. But so these are just a few, of course, there are quite a lot, and you'd notice that seeing that we're dealing with sequencing and time and so on. A lot of the time words and sequencing words can be used to begin a phrase, and that counts as a transition phrase as well. But we definitely want to use a couple of transition words. And yes, there are quite a few others. So we don't want to use transition words only, and we don't want to use transition phrases only. We want a few of each. Um, the only thing with the transition words that I want to caution you, you see words like next, then um, first, second, third, those we have to be really careful with how we use those. In fact, I would recommend not using first, second, third in the development of a report. Yes, you can use next and then, and I think those words work quite nicely. But first, second, third, they make the report feel more like a process and not reporting on a situation. And so it changes the whole feel and tone of the report, and it doesn't give the kind of breakdown that you really want. So avoid those, but definitely next, then any of the time words that you can use to create phrases, and then you have afterwards, subsequently, um, and a couple others that are also useful. All right. And so, whoops, I missed. Where did we go? Right. Incident reports. For incident reports, we've been doing incident reports over and over. We've touched on it quite a lot in detail. And so your reminder this week is just you want to focus on incident reports this week again. And these are situations that result in harm to someone or damage to property or maybe theft, but all of this is deliberately done. And so you want to practice that quick planning. We're definitely looking at planning the reports effectively. We want to get the introduction format clear. Remember, I advocate like a 3 or 4 sentence introduction. That's a standard type of introduction that students could sort of memorize the template, and then they would fill in the details as needed. And of course, brainstorm content. Just a quick check-in and brainstorming the content to make sure that the child you're working with or the students, they can actually come up with ideas for what happens in situations, because that's a lot. The majority of things that I see, notes from teachers when I work with my students after school, content is usually like 3, maximum 4. I get very seldom do I get a student getting content for 5 on a regular basis. It's because the students are struggling with understanding what goes into which sections. So I do get some that have consistently 4 in content, but the majority are around 3 in content because they have to keep practicing and coming up with, going through prompts that follow lots of different scenarios so that they can understand some of the details, and don't just leave them on their own. After they do their worksheet or they write the essay, sit with them and brainstorm and discuss and make sure they understand the kind of information that would go in each of the paragraphs for the different types of report prompts that you're working with. All right. And so this week, reviewing appropriate transitions for reports, we're practicing quick planning incident reports, and you want to write a complete incident report, and you want to finish within 50 minutes. So now you're timing so that you can make sure that the child is working within time. And so the best resource that I have regarding the planning and the practice for the reports would be this 25 worksheets for report planning. So you get like 15 full-length planning worksheets, 10 quick planning worksheets, and summary pages to track the planning time because you really want to get that planning time 5 minutes or less. If the student could get their planning time with sufficient content ideas 5 minutes or less, then they have a good 35 minutes that they would be able to write the report and then they can wrap up 10 minutes. It really helps them organize themselves effectively. And so, of course, after you do the planning, you have 25 prompts that the student could write. So you could continue, have them fully writing the report, and then you can go through it and see. And to assist with that, um, in that worksheet, not only do you get that, the quick planning and the full length planning, you also get notes on why planning matters. So there's a whole introduction section, different types of reports explained, how to use the worksheets, example plans so that you could see what that looks like, and then a few tips for writing reports during the exam, how to maximize the time and the understanding of that. Now, of course, there's a companion to this, the 5 reports challenge. If you want to get samples and different things, I also have a smaller booklet for $50 that has um, 3 reports and 3 narratives with a few notes and tips as well. I don't ever give like just straight up worksheets. There are always notes to help guide you, to help you understand how to use the worksheets and how to get the most out of them, as well as to support in the development of reports, narratives, and comprehension. So that's this is what I would say get now. Um, the other one would have samples. You can decide. That one is 135 for this is $75, and there's a lot that you could do with this one. All right. Okay. So now on to the narratives. So with narratives, this week we're talking about characters and realism. So yes, we've done character development before, and we made the distinction between character description and development, and lots of discussion there. Again, go back through the archives and locate that episode. But this week, I want to. Oh, my mouse just keeps clipping forward. I don't understand why. I want to talk a little bit more about the whole idea of making characters realistic and the fact that, while we do want the characters realistic, it's quite okay for students to have fantasy characters that may have different features and so on, and really kind of explore and expand their thinking and their creativity when it comes to characters. And so there's a difference between the real and realistic. So realistic means that the character is believable. And of course, if the character description is real, then what you're looking at is a character that could actually exist. So you can have a realistic character for the type of story that's being told, but that character might not exist in our world and our planet as we might know it. And so try to get students to think really creatively about describing characters, especially the physical characteristics of a character. I know some students, they don't write anything beyond realistic fiction, and realistic fiction means simply that it's a story about a situation where the character is very emotionally involved in things and situations that could actually happen in real life. Sometimes they could be described as like slice of life, if you've ever heard that term before. Yeah, realistic fiction could be described as slice of life, um, stories and so on. But try to get students really expanding their thinking. And I know you're thinking, hey, we're getting to the exam now, it's time to buckle down. January, we're still in January. Now is still a good time to do some exploration so that students can really understand what they're capable of and so they know what works and what doesn't work when they get into the exam. It's still a safe enough time in January to do a little bit of stretching still, especially if you're just really starting and just buckling down and not having, pushed too much last year. All right. And so in doing all of this, I shared two acronyms with my students that I'm going to share with you today. And one has to do with dream because we want to dream with our characters. And then we want to give them some charm. And so this is what I'm talking about. So when we dream with characters, we look at their description, and primarily here we're talking physical description. We consider the role they have to play in this story. And remember, the main character is the most important character in your short story, so that you want to focus on that character. And so there are different roles. I mean, we have the villain, we have supporting characters, we have background characters, other characters, but the story is being told from the perspective of the main character. And so students really do need to get that clear and understand first person versus third person and those types of things. That kind of comes in there. We want to make sure the character has emotions, and that emotions are described throughout. We're looking at their actions as well, and then their motivation. So motivation is really important because it has to do with what does the character want. And I know for those of you who've been following this series, you've heard me say that 100 times probably, especially in the introduction. What does the character want? If the character doesn't want anything, then whatever obstacles they face, it wouldn't really matter. They wouldn't care. And the more character cares about accomplishing their goals, is the more involved and emotional they will be, and the more connected readers will be to that character. So motivation is pretty important. So we have that dream. So we're dreaming with our characters, but then we also want to give them charm when we're writing. And so we have clothing, hair, accessories, radiance, and markings. Now, the um radiance is the one that I guess radiance and markings are the two that, might not understand so clearly, but of course we know clothing, we know hair, we know accessories. Um, Radiance would have to do with the body size, any peculiar things about the body, maybe a larger nose or um what do we call it? Let's see, maybe long wiry fingers, a long neck, um, bigger ears or smaller ears, the unique features kind of thing. And then markings would be like tattoos and birthmarks and scars, those types of things. Oh, accessories like, um, glasses, hair pieces, like bubbles and ribbons and hats, bags, those types of things. Yeah, that'll come under accessories. And so when you go through that, you would, of course, make sure the student understands these and then have them memorize it. So when they're writing, you could say things like, hey, I don't see any charm in this character. What's going on here? Um, and then I also tell students there's another acronym that I use for setting description. It's called flavor. We'll talk about that again when we do setting again. Um, I tell them, 2 parts charm, 3 parts flavor in every paragraph. And so that means 2 character descriptions using one of each. So maybe one clothing, one hair, or one accessory, one markings, however you want to work it out. And then 3 parts flavor. And so they have 3 representations of what flavor is in the paragraph. And that should be sufficient for them to have a pretty descriptive and interesting paragraph, right? And so this is something that you really want to get students memorizing. And to help you with that, I have a set of worksheets. Now, for this, there's something called description in action. If you've been following the series, you would have heard me say that before. If this is the first time you're hearing about description in action, all it is that the actions of the character are used to integrate descriptions into a scene. So if a character is walking into a room, we might use that opportunity to talk about them, um, their footsteps, their shoes, or when they walk into the room, what they see. You can talk about maybe their eyes, maybe they smell something. You can talk about their nose, maybe they bump into something. You can talk about their skin or their body, and use that opportunity to describe setting as well. So the description and action for characters really has to do with understanding how to integrate that action of the character. So you get the character active and you get the character description, physical description at the same time. So we're not pausing the story to give a description. So those worksheets are finally done. And so in this package, the art of character description, what you're getting is there are lots of notes. There are about 6 pages of notes going into detail with the description and action, what it is, how to do it, lots of examples. Then there are some worksheets that have been populated, some that are blank that you could reuse them and do your own description so that the worksheet could keep going. You print the blank page, you get a photo of a character, or you could do it digitally and then print it. Lots of different ways to use it. And then character description worksheets where you go through charm, so you get a breakdown of the acronym, what it means, some examples as well. And then 6 narrative prompts that you could use for identifying, okay, what type of characters are you going to use in these stories? And, brainstorm describing the characters. So lots of awesome practice with character description. You really can't go wrong. That's one of the areas I know for me, I had a lot of fun creating the worksheets and I discussed it with a couple of the teachers and I shared some of the ideas, so made some tweaks and so on so that you get the most out of it. Um, Character description, especially physical description, is something that I tend to forget in stories all the time. So having this actually is helping me as a writer. I have at the back of my head charm. So as I'm writing, I'm looking and am I seeing any charm for this character in this paragraph? It works wonders. So if you want to know more about that and how to get students writing with it, then you could get a copy of these worksheets and I'm putting together a program, a short course on how to teach character description and so on, but that's coming soon. That'll probably not be before SEA. That's after SEA stuff. But before SEA, if we're heading into SEA, definitely get a copy of this. All right. And then of course we have this 7 stories challenge, samples, prompts, prompt analysis guidelines, self-marking format, tons of information here. So if you don't already have a copy, get a copy of this as well. All right. Oops. I clicked forward. Man, you saw the activity, but okay. Let me back up and we're talking comprehension, right? Um, so with context clues and responses, what we're looking at today is, sometimes students they know the answer, especially when it comes to the context clues and figuring out a word, but they tend to take the word at face value and not try to fit the answer that they're thinking of into the sentence. And so sometimes they come up with words that don't work quite well for the context that they're working in. So when we're looking at context, um, we want to pay attention to different things. Is there a slide? Hmm. Yeah. So this is the activity that I did with the students. it's called My Dog Has Four Cucumbers. Now, I didn't create it, and honestly, I discovered this in reading because I always do reading and research to find out, okay, what are the strategies other teachers are using and so on. I got this like years ago. It was part of an activity packet that I got through I think I downloaded a package from a university. They were talking about reading comprehension and different things. And so this strategy is used to teach students to kind of think outside of the box, as well as to be able to understand meaning in a sentence, even though there's a word in the sentence that they may not fully understand. So, of course, does the dog really have four cucumbers? No. The dog did not go to the market and get any cucumbers. Nobody gave the dog cucumbers. The whole point is that the word cucumbers is a substitute for a word that would make the um, sentence make a lot more sense. So what we're looking for is a word to put there that makes a lot more sense. So my dog has four what? And then so what you're going to do at this point is to kind of like guide the students through brainstorming. Some students get it immediately. Well, dogs have four legs, or they might say paws. But some students might say, well, why doesn't the dog have four cucumbers? Well, the point about it is that the word is not cucumbers. We're just using cucumbers because it's a funny word to drop in a random sentence. Believe me, students crack up when we do the follow-up exercises. You know, we do things like let me give you one, see if I remember one off the top of my head. We do things like, oh yeah, don't forget to brush your cucumbers before you go to bed. Now, listen, I tell you, students, some of them they're almost on the floor laughing because it's like a ridiculous sentence, you know? But it gets them thinking and they say, Miss, no, it's brush your teeth. I'm like, yes, but how do you know it's brush your teeth? That's what I think too, but what gives you the clue? How do you figure it out? And then we discuss that, and I get them to see how they could use that in deciphering words in a passage, in a regular passage, or a text or a poem that they don't know. And then they remember my dog has four cucumbers because it made them laugh. And then they remember, hey, I could use the context. I could figure this out without having to think this is so overwhelming because I know my dog doesn't have four cucumbers. He has four paws. So I'm going to now look for different things in the sentence, other words in the sentence. Where are the clues? What gives me the idea? Something, there's information in the sentence other than the word that you don't know. And sometimes you could read ahead and never even understand what that word means, but you get the gist of the sentence and therefore you can answer a comprehension question. And so that is what you want to do. So, of course, this is not a one-time thing. You have to do this a few times in different ways, not always with the cucumbers, but in different ways. So, we're starting here because it's a fun activity to begin. And you could make this interactive. You could actually have a plushy dog and some cucumbers or something, however you want to do to really make it interactive and to get the students' attention. I mean, this is like I work with students who are sometimes on the spectrum, that's autism spectrum, those who have ADHD, and students who really have challenges. And these kinds of activities really get them interested and keep their attention. And while all of this is happening, they're learning that they can train their brains to think outside the box and recognize context clues. But like I said, repetition is the key. So as we're talking about context, and you're going back and forth, ever so often, check and see how many cucumbers your dogs have. All right. So it really gets the students interested. And so, man, this thing is just really clicking forward. Um, so this week with context clues, you want to review the types of context clues. And I did this one a bit recently, so you can check back again, previous episodes, tons and tons of information. Um, there are different types of context clues, and some students think that a context clue means that they just have to concentrate on the sentence and figure it out. That's not all there is. You can identify synonyms and antonyms and explanations and contrasts and all kinds of different things that can actually guide you to figure out meaning in a sentence. So we're looking for specific words, or we're looking for phrases, or just really trying to understand the entire sentence in general. There are different types of context clues that help. And so you want to review that. Don't take it for granted that students know, yeah, we did that and they remember everything. No, you want to review it. Yeah? And so after you review that, practice with appropriate responses so that when it comes to the vocabulary in particular or the meaning, you want to make sure that students have a system of kind of like double checking so that they fit their meaning into the passage, they fit their meaning into the context. Just as with the dog having the cucumbers, if you say, well, okay, pause, how does it fit the context? Does it make sense for what it is we're trying to discuss? Yeah. And so when you're done with that, you want to work with some comprehension worksheets. And those worksheets, I have a few. Um, I know there are lots of worksheets out, so get your hand on some pretty good worksheets that have answers that you could work with. So, eventually, I do recommend working with the newer past papers. And when I say newer, I really think like the last 3 years would be the best to work with. But you also need to get your hands on the 2025 to 2028 assessment framework. If you are a member of SEA Peacefield Approach, the document is in the files there. If you're not, it's on the ministry's website. Go to primary school resources and it is there so you can get a copy. If you're going through and for some whatever reason you're not finding it anywhere, just WhatsApp me 717-4993 and let me know that you'd like to get a copy of the assessment framework and I can send you a copy. No trouble at all. Just let me know because it's freely available and it's worth going into the objectives. They map out, they tell you, remind you of the number of questions that will be in the exam for each of the comprehension passages, what type of questions, how many of each kind of question, and those kinds of details. It's worth studying the exam in addition to preparing to understand it. So you're not just working with the comprehension itself, you're looking at the exam format. So study the exam so you can get yourself some past papers. Don't go beyond 2019. In fact, you should really stop at 2020, but I included 2019 because it's some additional vocabulary and so on. Um, you really shouldn't go beyond that because the exam format was very, very different at that time. So the closest to the exam as it's going to be in 2025 is the 2024 exam. So definitely get yourself a copy of that if nothing else. It's floating around, so you could get a copy of it. On the ministry's website, you would get, I think, 21, 22, and 23 from the ministry website with the whole works, like with, writing in candidate number and all those things. They have all of that. The other copies that are floating around wouldn't have that. The ones that I have don't have that. But if you want to get that real full sort of exam kind of experience, whether you're homeschooling or you're doing after school or you're trying to support your own child, you can like create that whole mock exam kind of feeling by getting that full exam from the ministry's website, but you'd probably get like the 2023. You're not gonna get the 2024 up. It's not posted, but you can get, the inside of the exam itself, many different places. So what I'm offering here are the answers with explanations not the actual exam. You can get those lots of different places. If you need a copy of the exams, like I said, some of the ministry's website, SEA Peaceful Approach has copies as well. So you can freely download them and go through them. But if you want my take on the answers, that's what I have available. And then I have um, a couple passages, fiction, nonfiction, poems, graphics, along with the answers and notes about, why one answer makes more sense, that kind of thing. So some explanations to help guide you as you develop and work with comprehension. All right, and so that is it. We are at the end of episode 20, nope, sorry, episode 34. Right? And so we've covered some transitions and incidents with reports, character description and realism, ideas with narratives, and a look at context clues and responses. And remember, yeah, my dog has 4 cucumbers, right? So, um, if it is that you want to get some more information about anything that we discussed, any details that you thought you want me to go into a little bit more explanation, send me a message. If I haven't already done it, then I will bring it up again. If it has already been done, I'll send you a link for the episode where I covered the information and details. But definitely, go back and check the archives and see what you want to go through. The episodes are roughly about 1 hour long, but you can skip ahead. I usually do reports first, then narratives, and then comprehension. So you could skip to the different sections, and get directly to what you need. So this is Shelley Edwards Byron saying, have a wonderful rest of the day today. And check me back next week for another episode of Journey to SEA 2025. We're all in this together, and I have lots of resources to support you. So reach out if you're not sure, you're looking for something, you need some help with something, reach out 717-4993, and I'll help you as best as I can. So take care, everybody. Bye bye.